Imagine the entire world having to hit a reset button after the single biggest disaster in human history. That's the monumental task we're diving into today, the story of how the United Nations was created.
We're talking about the end of the Second World War. It was a catastrophe on a scale that's, well, hard to even imagine. Millions dead, cities just gone. And world leaders realized something pretty terrifying.
It was that.
That their first attempt at a global organization had completely, utterly failed.
Right, the League of Nations.
Yeah.
It was supposed to stop exactly this kind of thing after World War I. So why did it just fall apart?
Well, it was a structural problem, really. The League didn't have any real enforcement power, no army, and crucially, the United States never even joined, so it lacked that, that global weight.
So couldn't force anyone to do anything.
Exactly. By the time the war started, it was clear. If you really wanted peace, you needed a new system, one with, for lack of a better word, teeth. A place where nations had to talk instead of fight.
And a system that was so useful, so powerful, that the big players couldn't afford to ignore it this time.
Precisely. A global reset.
Okay, so let's get to that founding moment. Where did this massive idea actually, become real?
It all happened in San Francisco, California, in April 1945. The war in Europe was just ending, and delegates from 50 different countries all gathered for this huge conference.
50 countries, all with completely different ideas about how the world should work. That sounds like a recipe for disaster.
Oh, it was incredibly difficult. They spent months arguing over every single word of the founding document. They debated international law, human rights, everything. But the key was that every nation, even the smallest ones, gotta have a say.
And all that work ended with them signing the official rulebook.
The UN Charter, signed on June 26, 1945. Think of it like the Constitution for the world. It's the contract every member agrees to when they join.
So what does that contract actually say? If you sign the charter, what are you promising to do?
The Charter lays out a couple of main goals. First, and this was the most urgent one, is to maintain international peace and security.
Stop wars from starting.
Stop wars, de-escalate fights when they do happen, all of that.
And what's the second goal?
To develop friendly relations among nations. And they added a really important phrase, based on equal rights.
Yeah.
It recognizes that peace isn't just about not fighting, it's also about respect.
That makes sense. So let's talk about the structure. How does it all work? I know there are two main power centers, and they are very, very different. Let's start with the one that feels more democratic, the General Assembly.
The General Assembly is the closest thing we have to a world parliament. It's the main forum where all the member nations get together to talk about global issues.
And the really wild part is the voting.
Exactly. Every single country, whether it's tiny like Luxembourg or huge like China, gets exactly one vote.
Wow. So in that room, everyone is equal.
In that room, yes. It means smaller nations can actually drive the conversation on big topics like poverty or the environment or global health. They also get to set the UN's budget and approve new members.
Okay, but here's the big question. What can the General Assembly actually do? Can it force a country to change its policies?
It can't. That's the key difference. Its decisions are officially called recommendations. They aren't legally binding.
So it's more about influence than direct power.
You could call it soft power. I mean, if nearly 200 countries all vote to condemn something, that carries a huge amount of moral and political weight. It can shape global opinion and put a lot of pressure on a country.
Okay, so it's the world's moral compass. Now let's contrast that with the other body, the one that has the real hard power, the Security Council.
The Security Council is, without a doubt, the world's police force. It's the body responsible for taking immediate action to keep the world safe. And it's much smaller, just 15 members.
15 members, but only 5 of them really hold all the cards, the permanent members.
That's right. The P5, China, France, Russia, the United Kingdom, and the United States. They were the major allied powers that won World War II.
And they get to stay on the council forever. Why is that?
It's a bit of a harsh political reality. The founders knew that without the full commitment of the world's most powerful countries, the UN would fail just like the League of Nations did. So they gave the P5 this permanent power in exchange for their guaranteed participation.
And that power includes the most controversial tool in the entire UN system, the veto.
The veto is a genuine superpower. An official decision by the Council is called a resolution. Let's say 14 of the 15 members vote yes on something.
Okay.
But if just one of those 5 permanent members votes no, the resolution is blocked, vetoed. it's dead.
Just one no vote can stop the entire world from acting.
It can. It gives those 5 countries enormous power to protect themselves or their allies. It's often criticized because it can lead to paralysis, to gridlock.
But I guess the argument is that without it, the UN might not even exist.
That's the trade-off. It's the constant tension between the ideal of equality you see in the General Assembly and the reality of power in the Security Council. But when they do all agree, their decisions are legally binding for every single UN member.
And that's when they can do things like send in peacekeepers or impose sanctions. What exactly are sanctions?
Sanctions are all about economic pressure. Things like banning trade with a country, freezing their money in foreign banks, or stopping their leaders from traveling. The goal is to force a country to change its behavior without, starting a war.
Got it. So beyond just stopping fights, the UN had these huge long-term goals for making the world a better place. The first one was a direct result of the war's horrors, promoting human rights.
Absolutely. After what the world had just witnessed, making sure people were treated with dignity was a top priority. So they set up a commission to define what those basic rights should be.
Which led to the Universal Declaration of Human Rights in 1948, a foundational document.
It truly is. It states that everyone is born free and equal in dignity and rights. It covers things like the right to life, freedom from slavery, the right to an education. The UN's job is to monitor how countries are doing and to speak out when these rights are abused.
So that handles how governments treat their own people. What about how governments treat each other? That brings us to the second big goal, international law.
Right. For peace to last, you need predictable rules. The UN helps create and uphold laws that apply to everyone, which makes international relations less chaotic.
And to settle arguments, they needed a court, a world court.
The International Court of Justice, based in The Hague, in the Netherlands, its job is to settle legal disputes between countries.
So if two countries are arguing over where their border is,
It goes to the ICJ. Or if they disagree on how to interpret a treaty, it's important to know it's for countries, not for, individual criminals.
so it deals with border disputes, not bank robberies.
Exactly right. It reinforces the idea that there's always a legal way to solve a problem.
Okay, and that third and final goal seems really practical. The idea that you can't have peace when people are desperate.
Yes, this is the job of the Economic and Social Council. The founders knew that poverty and instability go hand in hand, so they created a body to coordinate global efforts to improve people's quality of life.
So by fighting poverty, improving healthcare, promoting education,
Yeah.
you're taking away the reasons people might go to war in the first place.
It's the long game for peace. If people have food and jobs and opportunity, they're much less likely to turn to violence.
So who are the people running this massive machine day to day?
That would be the Secretariat. It's the thousands of international staff who do the daily work of the UN. They're the translators, the administrators, the project managers who actually run all the programs.
And the public face of that whole operation is the Secretary General.
The Secretary General is the UN's top diplomat. They have to be completely neutral, and their job is basically to be a spokesperson for the world's people. They travel to conflict zones, mediate disputes. It's an incredibly tough job. They're appointed for a 5-year term.
Speaking of being on the ground, let's talk about the peacekeepers, the soldiers in the blue helmets. What is their job exactly? They are there to fight a war, are they?
No, absolutely not. That's a huge misconception. Peacekeepers are an impartial force. Their job is to maintain a ceasefire after the fighting has stopped. They protect civilians, help deliver aid, and maybe help with elections. They can only go in if the countries involved agree to let them.
So they're there to create stability so that the politicians can find a real, lasting solution.
That's a perfect way to put it. And to handle all the UN's different jobs, they created a whole system of specialized agencies.
Right, because the General Assembly can't vote on every detail of a vaccination program.
Of course not. So you have groups like the World Health Organization, the WHO, that coordinates global efforts against diseases, or UNICEF, which focuses entirely on helping children in need.
Or UNESCO, which protects World Heritage Sites, like the pyramids.
Exactly. These agencies use technical experts to get specific jobs done efficiently.
So after all this time, almost 80 years, what's the verdict? Has it worked?
Well, it's definitely not perfect. The veto power can cause serious gridlock. But since 1945, the UN has played a huge role in preventing small conflicts from blowing up into another world war.
And it's had some incredible successes, right? I mean, it led the global effort that completely wiped out smallpox.
It did. And it's provided food and shelter for millions upon millions of refugees. And maybe most importantly, it's still the only place where every country in the world can sit down in one room to talk about the huge problems no one can solve alone. Things like climate change.
The founding of the UN was really the world trying its hardest to learn from its most painful mistake. It was an attempt to build a future based on conversation instead of conflict.
And that idea that talking is always better than fighting is why understanding how this all works is so important to understanding the world you live in today.
Now that you know the rules, what role will you play in holding the world to them?
Good luck with your studies.